Hey everyone, welcome to Global Azure Day 2020 Omaha, hosted by Omaha Azure User Group. This is the first session lined up for today, and there are four more sessions after this one. I would strongly encourage you to attend all the sessions and do join us at question and answer session at 12:30 Central Time. In this session, I'm going to talk about getting started with Microsoft Azure. This session is going to be a level 100 talk. We are going to touch upon different services that Azure offers, but we are not going to deep dive into any specific Azure services in this talk. This session is for people who want to understand what Azure is, what different services it offers, how can one get started with Azure, and so on. You might already have consumed one or the other Azure services in your projects, or you might already have a little background on using Microsoft Azure. I hope this talk will be beneficial to everyone. Let's get started. A quick introduction about me. My name is Vaibhav Gujral. I have over 13 years of experience working on enterprise class applications. I'm a Microsoft certified Azure Solutions Architect and I hold a few other certifications. I'm currently working for Kivit as a cloud architect. They are one of the largest construction companies in the United States and they are also the sponsors for this session. I'm also a co-organizer at Omaha Azure User Group who are organizing this event. I'm a regular speaker at local user groups speaking on Azure related topics, and I also blog on webofgujral.com. You can follow me on my Twitter handle, webgujral. With that, let's jump onto agenda and see what we are going to talk in today's session. We are going to start with very basic, touching upon what is cloud computing, what are the different cloud service models. Then we'll talk about what Azure is, what are the different Azure regions, data centers. Then we'll see how to create an Azure account, and we'll touch upon Azure core services like compute, networking, and storage. We'll look into Azure pricing calculator and Azure cost management. We'll then talk about Azure deployment models and Azure management tools. And if time permits, I would try to demonstrate Azure portal and few other tools. And finally, I will conclude my talk by sharing some more resources that you can utilize for your further reading. What is cloud computing? When people start talking about cloud, they mean different things. I have picked up a definition for cloud computing from Microsoft's website, where they have defined cloud computing as the delivery of computing services over the internet to offer flexible resources and economies of scale.
You typically pay only for cloud services you use. Based on this definition, a cloud can be said to have five primary characteristics. The first thing it provides
Is an on demand self service capability where a cloud consumer can provision cloud services as needed automatically without requiring human interaction with the cloud provider. Then all the cloud services are accessible over a network like internet so that they can be consumed by the cloud consumer. Next, the cloud provider's computing resources are pooled together to serve multiple consumers using a multi-tenant model with the different physical and virtual resources dynamically assigned and reassigned according to the consumer demand. Cloud services can also be elastically provisioned and released, in some cases automatically scaled upward and inward to meet the demand. To the consumer, the capabilities always appear as unlimited. Finally, cloud provider monitors, control, and report resource usage to the consumers, and consumers pay only for the services that they consume. This provides transparency between consumer and the cloud provider. Jumping onto the different cloud service models, there are primarily three types of cloud service models: software as a service, platform as a service, and infrastructure as a service. Let's start with software as a service or SaaS. Example could be Office 365 or Dynamics 365. Software as a service is an application that you just consume. You don't manage the infrastructure or patches or application or anything else. You just buy a license to consume the service. You don't have any control whatsoever. Vendor can upgrade versions or add or remove features, and you always get what the vendor would like to offer. Moving on, if we want to have some more control on application and data, but don't want to manage low level stuff like infrastructure, operating system, patching, and so on, then platform as a service is a good fit. Likewise, if I want to have total control on operating system, the patches I need, application, data, middleware, and so on, IaaS is the right choice.
Always remember that the highest control you can get in a cloud environment is through infrastructure as a service. There are many other acronyms like identity as a service, or database as a service, or function as a service, or so on.
Always remember any acronym with as a service phrase in it refers to a cloud offering with different level of control and management. Let's touch upon the different flavors of cloud. In a public cloud, the vendor is completely responsible for infrastructure, the hardware purchase and maintenance, and provides a wide variety of platform services that the consumer can use. You can lease whatever services you require on as needed basis, thereby converting what had been a capital expense into an operational expense. It also allows you to lease access to hardware and software resources that would be too expensive to purchase. Although you are limited to the hardware provided by the cloud vendor, you only have to pay for it when you use it. In a private cloud, you create a cloud environment in your own data center or a third party location and provide self service access to compute resources to users in your organization. This offers a simulation of public cloud to your users, but you remain completely responsible for the purchase and maintenance of the hardware and software services you provide. A hybrid cloud integrates public and private clouds, allowing you to host workloads in the most appropriate location. For example, you can host a high scale website in the public cloud and link it to a highly secure database hosted in your private cloud or on premise data center. All right, now we understand what cloud is and what are the different cloud service models. Let's talk about Azure. Azure is Microsoft's cloud computing platform. It has 58 regions globally, and its services can be consumed in over 140 countries worldwide.
It offers a seamless online self service portal experience where you can create and manage your Azure resources. Azure supports infrastructure as a service and platform as a service models. Office 365 is an example of software as a service from Microsoft.
Azure Stack is the offering for private cloud from Microsoft. Before we jump on to any further, it is important to understand what an Azure region is. A region in Azure is a set of data centers deployed within a latency defined parameter and connected through a dedicated regional low latency network. In other words, a region is a collection of data centers located within a closed perimeter. A geography is a discrete market typically containing two or more regions that preserves data residency and compliance boundaries. Geographies allows customers with specific data residency and compliance needs to keep their data and applications close. Geographies are fault tolerant to withstand complete region failure through their connection to Microsoft's dedicated high capacity networking infrastructure. Availability zones are physical separate locations within an Azure region. Each availability zone is made up of one or more data centers equipped with independent power, cooling, and networking. What you see here is different geographies with their corresponding regions. There are 6 geographies altogether: Americas, Europe, Asia Pacific, Middle East, and Africa, Azure Government, and Azure China. Each of these geographies have multiple regions within them, making each of these geographies fault tolerant. For example, in Americas, there are 11 regions ranging from East US, East US 2, Central US, South Central US, and so on. In Europe, there are 15 regions ranging from North Europe, West Europe, France Central, and so on. In Asia Pacific, there are 13 regions ranging from East Asia to Central India, Japan East, and so on. This gives a better view of the different regions in the different geographies. The blue dots here are regions that are available for consumption, meaning you can deploy your services in any of the available regions. The ones with the dotted circle are regions which are announced and are going to be available in the recent future. Then there are few circles with a diamond in them. It indicates that those regions have availability zones which you can select while configuring your resources. One last note here: when you choose a region to deploy your resources to, there are few considerations to keep in mind. Certainly, for data compliance and regulatory reasons, you might have to choose a particular region, but you should also keep in mind that not all the services are available in all the regions. You can refer to the link provided up there to check the latest list of available regions and what services are available in which region. If you head out to azure.microsoft.com/global infrastructure, you can go and check out everything about the available Azure regions, geographies, the products by regions, locations, and featured regions. If you'll go to the Azure regions page, it gives you the latest update on how many regions are available worldwide and in how many countries the Azure services can be consumed. Likewise, it also details the different Azure geographies, and within each geography, which are the different regions. Likewise, under product by the region, you can go ahead and you can find out the available services in each of the regions. Like if I want to find out where is virtual machines available in, let's say, North America or United States and Canada, it gives me a list of the regions where the different virtual machine sizes are available. Likewise, I can go and find out under which region, what is the actual location where the region or the data center is located. If you want to drill down further into any specific region, you can go ahead and look into the region under the featured regions. Let's talk about how you can get an Azure account so that you can start consuming Azure services. There are three main account types that you can opt from. To start with, you can sign up for a free account to receive a $200 credit with a 1-month validity. Apart from the $200 credit, it also gives you access to certain services which are available for free for 12 months. And after the 12 months, these services automatically convert into pay-as-you-go usage. And there are 25 plus services which are always free. You can also get a pay-as-you-go account. As the name suggests, you pay for whatever services you consume. You can directly create a pay-as-you-go account, or you can convert your free account into pay-as-you-go after your free credit is utilized. Note that to sign up for free trial, you need to provide a credit card just for verification purposes. Microsoft doesn't charge you for anything unless you convert your free subscription into pay-as-you-go. In the pay-as-you-go subscription account, you have to provide a credit card which is being charged based on your usage at the end of your billing cycle. Lastly, if you are a Visual Studio subscriber, or in other words, if you have MSDN subscription through your employer, or if you have purchased one for your personal use, you get a monthly credit to use Azure services. It might range from $50 to $150 depending upon your Visual Studio subscription. Once you understand the different Azure offer types and you have decided to get an Azure account, there are three ways to purchase an Azure account. You can directly get it by signing up on the Azure website, or you can get it through a Microsoft representative. You can also purchase managed cloud solutions from a Microsoft partner over marketplace. If you are interested in getting an Azure account, I would recommend you to head out to azure.microsoft.com/free. Once you end up on that page, it gives the list of all the free services which are available for 12 months. And it also lists the products which are always free. And then if you want to create a free account to get $200 free credit for a month, go ahead and create your free account from here. The moment you click on this, it will ask you to log in using your live ID. Once you are logged in, it will ask your details and you will be all set. Likewise, if you click on buy now, you can directly go ahead and buy pay-as-you-go subscription. Under pay-as-you-go subscription, you can still use always free products for free. Always remember, Azure is a pay-as-you-go cloud provider, so whatever services you consume, you only pay for that. One more thing to understand about Azure accounts is the different billing account types. When you sign up for an Azure account, it creates a billing account of one of the types for you to manage invoices, payments, and track costs. There are three types of billing account types you might fall under depending upon how you sign up for Azure. If you have signed up through Azure website, you will get billing account of type Microsoft Online Services Program. If your organization signs an enterprise agreement with Microsoft to use Azure services, your billing account will be of type enterprise agreement. If your organization works with a Microsoft representative to sign a Microsoft customer agreement, you will be getting a billing account of type Microsoft customer agreement. I'm aware that this stuff might be confusing for some of you, but at a high level, please understand what happens when you create an Azure account. Easiest way to understand is to learn the difference between an Azure account and an Azure subscription. An Azure billing account is created when you sign up to use Azure. It is used to manage invoices, payments, and track costs. You can have access to multiple billing accounts. On the other hand, Azure subscription is a logical container used to provision resources in Azure. When you sign up for an account, an Azure subscription is created by default. There can be multiple subscriptions under an account. Any resource that you create in Azure must be created within a subscription. As I was telling in the earlier slide, when you create an Azure account, it is essentially a billing account which has all the invoicing and payment information. Under a billing account, there could be a different billing profile and invoice sections. This hierarchy depends upon purely on your organization's hierarchy. At the lowest level, you see the different Azure subscriptions, which are the logical containers for your Azure services. This is the place where your Azure resources are created. Moving on, let's talk about some of the Azure core services. Azure core services can be divided into three different categories: compute, networking, and storage. The term compute refers to the hosting model for the computing resources that your application runs on. Azure networking services enable secure communication between services over the internet and on-premises networks. And Azure storage services provide massively scalable, secure cloud storage for your data, apps, and workloads. On top of these set of core services, there are security and management services which are offered to efficiently and securely manage your environments. To start with Azure Compute Services, these include app services, which are managed services for hosting web apps, mobile backends, and RESTful APIs. Azure Kubernetes Services, which is a managed Kubernetes service for containerized applications. Azure Functions, which is a managed function as a service.
The fastest and simplest way to run a container in Azure is the container instances. Service Fabric is a distributed systems platform that can run in many environments, including Azure or on-premises. Lastly, virtual machines can be deployed and managed within an Azure Virtual Network.
Jumping onto the Azure networking services, these can be classified into different categories like connectivity services, which enable connectivity between Azure and on-prem resources. Some of the services include virtual networks, express routes, VPN gateways, virtual network gateways, Azure DNS, and so on. Application protection services protect your application using any or combination of services like Web Application Firewall or WAF, network security groups, firewalls, or private links. Application delivery services deliver applications in the Azure network like Azure Front Door, Load Balancer, Traffic Manager, App Gateway, and so on. And lastly, the category for monitoring your network traffic, including Network Watcher, Express Route Monitor, Azure Monitor, and so on. Azure offers a handful of storage services like disk storage, which is scalable and secure storage for your virtual machines, blob storage, which is a massively scalable storage, secure storage for your unstructured data, scalable Azure Data Lake storage, low-cost archive storage, SMB-based Azure file storage or file shares, queue storage for message-based communication between apps, and so on. On the same lines as the Azure storage services, Azure offers a handful of database services, starting with Cosmos DB, which is a multi-region, multi-model, NoSQL database with guaranteed low latency and high availability. You can run your SQL workloads either as a full-fledged SQL server on a virtual machine, which is an infrastructure as a service offering, or you can migrate your SQL Server databases to the managed PaaS offering, Azure SQL Databases. There is a data warehouse service known as Azure Synapse Analytics that was announced last year. Azure also offers a NoSQL key value store in the form of table storage and an open source compatible in-memory data store offering called as Azure Cache for Redis. Lastly, there are many managed open source NoSQL database services ranging from MySQL, Postgres, and MariaDB. Moving on, there are some specific services that we can utilize to host our web applications. Like web apps, which offers an HTTP based service for hosting web application, REST APIs, and mobile backends. We can deploy and run our containerized applications under web apps for containers.
Functions are the managed function as a service which can be used to run units of code independently in a true serverless manner. You can also utilize Azure Logic Apps for scheduling, automating, and orchestrating tasks, business processes, and workflow, all without writing a single line of code.
If you need a fully isolated and dedicated environment for running apps like your LOB applications at high scale, you can use app service environments. Azure also offers a global content delivery network for delivering high bandwidth content. One of the use cases for CDN is delivering static files across the globe. Lastly, there is a AI-powered cloud search service known as Azure Cognitive Search, which can be used in mobile and web app development. Azure offers so many services that it might take me more than 45 minutes to talk about each of those. Just to summarize and give you a hint of what I'm speaking of, here is a snapshot of how many services Azure offers today. On the lower bottom is the Azure Data Center infrastructure, which is the physical infrastructure owned and managed by Microsoft. On top of that, you have IaaS services categorized into three categories: compute, networking, and storage. On top of that, you have all the different PaaS services which are customized to suit different needs. Like on the top, you see different options to run web based apps. Then there are services for running IoT workloads, AI, and data services, and so on. On the left side is the suite of management services used for managing your Azure environment efficiently. These include services like Azure Monitor for logging and monitoring, Azure Blueprints and policies for governance, Azure Cost Management for managing your costs, and so on. Lastly, on the right-hand side, there are security services like Azure AD, which is a cloud-based identity store providing features like single sign-on and multi-factor authentication, Key Vault, which is a secure key management service to protect your secrets in the cloud, and so on. Let's quickly jump onto Azure Portal to see. There are two ways you can see the different services offered by Azure. I'm right now into my Azure portal. One way to find out all the services is by clicking on create a resource here. I can go and choose whichever category of service I want to create under compute or networking, storage, security, IoT. You can also head out to all services and you can see all the different categories of services. You can list down all of them together under all, or you can go under different sections to see the different services offered under the different categories. Moving on, since you pay as you use for cloud services, it is highly important to understand how Azure pricing works. Before you create any Azure resource in your subscription, please visit Azure Pricing Calculator to get an estimate of how much it is going to cost you to use a particular service. For example, in this case, I'm running a virtual machine of size D4V3 in West US region with Windows OS. It is going to cost me $305 a month. If you will notice, there are different factors that will impact my Azure costs, like the region I am deploying my resource to, the SKU or the tier I have selected, and the operating system I have chosen here. You can also calculate total cost of ownership through TCO calculator provided by Microsoft, just like this pricing calculator. Once you have deployed your resources to Azure, how do you manage your costs? The solution is Azure Cost Management. Azure Cost Management is a one-stop dashboard within Azure Portal, which gives you a clear snapshot of your current costs and forecasted costs. In cost management dashboard, you can easily see the current actual cost, the forecasted cost, cost by each resource, cost by location, and so on. As you see, it gives a clear picture of Azure costs. You can further refine the filters on the top to see the cost for different time frames, different resources, and so on.
As I mentioned in the previous slide, you can see your accumulated costs so far and check trends to find forecasted costs. You can forecast costs from 1 month to 12 months in the future.
You can see cost by resource to find the most expensive resources in your environment. You can see daily cost to discover anomalies. You can compare cost for each service for past 3 months and generate trends. Finally, you can also see invoice details as well under cost management. You can directly go to cost management in Azure portal, or you can go to a specific resource group and go to cost analysis blade for that resource group to analyze the cost for that specific resource groups and the resources within it. Speaking of managing Azure cost, one service that comes very handy is Azure Advisor. It is a free service offered by Microsoft, which provides recommendations on how you can optimize your Azure costs and not only cost. In fact, it gives recommendations on how you can make your environment more secure, highly available, and performant. You can drill down into each of these sections to go through specific recommendations. I'll skip this demo right now and I'll cover it in the next one. Let's talk about how we can deploy our resources in Azure. Way back in the days when Azure was launched, it came with the Azure Service Management Deployment Model, which is now called as Classic Deployment Model. Under ASM, every resource existed independently and cannot be grouped with other resources. It was based on Azure Service Management APIs. One of the major drawbacks was the access management. Under ASM, there used to be service administrators who used to have access like God, meaning they could do anything. And if not an administrator, you couldn't do anything. In a nutshell, it was all or nothing access management. ASM is now discontinued, and I believe the last resources which support ASM will go away sometime next year. If you go to Azure portal and find a resource which has Classic included in their service name, it indicates they use old ASM service. ASM has been replaced with what is known as Azure Resource Manager or ARM. It's a declarative template-based repeatable deployment model. Under ARM, all the Azure resources are grouped, deployed, and managed together, meaning all the resources within a resource group share same life cycle. One advantage is that we can define dependencies between resources in ARM, meaning if resource A depends upon resource B to exist before it can be created, we can manage that dependency in ARM. It is the only recommended way to create any new Azure resource now. As I mentioned earlier, under ARM, all the Azure resources are grouped into something known as a resource group. All of the resources in a resource group shares the same life cycle. A resource can only be assigned to one group at a time. Most types of the resources can be moved to a different resource group at any time. The resources in a resource group cannot be in different regions. You can use a resource group to control access for the resources they are in. The point to note here is that resource group is just a logical container like subscription, and they don't cost anything. What costs is the actual resources that you create in your resource groups. When we define the resources to be created within a resource group under the hood, there are services called as resource providers which supplies these Azure resources to be created with a set of operations. For example, Microsoft.compute supplies the virtual machine resource, and Microsoft.storage is another common resource provider. A resource provider needs to be registered with your subscription before the resources can be created. By default, some of the common resource providers are already registered with new subscriptions, else the resource providers can also be registered manually. Here is how the complete ARM ecosystem looks like. You have Azure Resource Manager as the foundation. On top of ARM sits the resource providers, which in turn supplies Azure resources within a resource group. As you can see here, resource group is a logical collection of resources. There are two resource groups depicted here with different sets of resources. One resource group is for LOB application and the other one is for an IaaS workload. All the resource groups sit inside a subscription. On the lower left corner, you can see REST API endpoints, which are exposed by Azure, which can be consumed to manage Azure resources programmatically. ARM is a template-based deployment model. I thought it's better to touch upon the format of ARM template. The screen that you are seeing now is a JSON-based template depicting a resource manager template. It has 8 sections, starting with schema, which defines the location of the JSON schema that describes the version of the template language that you are using in your template. Then you can also define the version of your template. It could be any value like 1.0 or 1.1. You can use API profile value to avoid having to specify API versions for each resource in the template. When you specify an API profile version and don't specify an API version for the resource type, Resource Manager uses the API version for that resource type that is defined in the profile here. Parameters are the values that can be provided when deployment is executed. Likewise, variables are the values that can be used as JSON fragments to simplify your template language expressions. You can also define user-defined functions that are available within the template under the function element. Then all the resource types that are deployed or are updated in a resource group or subscription goes under the resources element. Finally, the values that are returned after the deployment goes under the outputs element. In the classic ASM deployment model, as I said before, it had one drawback: all or nothing access control. Under ARM, Azure offers a better access control mechanism known as role-based access control. Role-based access control helps you manage who has access to Azure resources, what they can do with those resources, and what areas they have access to. There are some built-in roles like owner, reader, contributor, and so on. Likewise, you can have your own custom roles defined. RBAC is applied to any security principal, including a user, group, service, principal, and so on. Don't mix these roles with Azure AD roles. These roles applies to Azure resources and are not the same as Azure AD roles like Global Administrator and Application Administrator. Under Azure AD, we have roles like Global Administrator, Application Admin, and so on, who have scope at the tenant level, whereas RBAC roles applies at the resource level. In the classic ASM models, as I said before, there used to be service administrators and co-administrators. I'll skip this demo as well. Coming to the last section of this talk, Azure provides a handful of management tools. First and foremost, Azure Portal is a full-fledged web-based portal through which you can do anything in your Azure environment, ranging from creating resources to deleting them, analyzing your Azure costs, managing RBAC, and whatsoever. If you are a PowerShell user, you can install Azure RM or AZ module to support Azure PowerShell. Using Azure PowerShell, you can do almost everything you can do in the portal. PowerShell traditionally has been a Windows-based shell, but with the introduction of PowerShell Core, it has become cross-platform, and you can manage your Azure environment through any platform. To support cross-platform users, Azure also offers a command line interface. It comes with what is known as AZ commandlets that you can use to manage your Azure environments. For users who don't have a terminal, can also use a web-based shell, which can be used right from Azure portal or through the URL shell.azure.com. It gives the option of running Bash and PowerShell. Using Bash, you can run your CLI commands, and using PowerShell, you can run your Azure PowerShell commands. Lastly, Azure also offers SDKs for different programming languages that you can consume in your project to manage and interact with your Azure resources.
Each of these tools call Azure Management REST APIs under the hood. You can also call these REST APIs directly to manage Azure resources.
There are some tools available for specific Azure services which you can utilize as well. AZ Copy is a command line utility to work with Azure Storage. Storage Explorer is a GUI-based tool to work with storage accounts. It is available as a separate install as well as integrated in Portal as well. You can use Azure Data Studio to connect to managed databases. SQL Server Management Studio can be used to connect to SQL databases. You can also use Service Bus Explorer for Service Bus. So when I was talking about cost management, once you log in into the Azure portal, go on the Cost Management plus Billing tab, click on Cost Management, head out to Cost Analysis. This is the dashboard where you can see all your accumulated daily costs and forecasted costs. You can filter it based on resource, cost by resource, daily cost by service, and you can also filter it based on invoice. You can change your time frame from last 7 days, last 3 months, last 30 days, and so on. Based on these, you can also set up alerts so that once your bill crosses certain amount, it can send you an alert. If you'll go under subscriptions, I have a single subscription here. If I click on that, I can go under cost analysis and see the overall cost for my subscription here. Likewise, I can go to the resource groups. I can pick up a resource group and I can see the cost for that specific resource group there. That said, you can run your Cloud Shell either within the Azure portal, or you can also go to the cloudshell.com or shell.azure.com. You can shut it down. You can configure your settings for a shell here. I also mentioned about Azure Advisor, which gives different recommendations for cost, performance, security, and high availability. You can go under each of those and see the individual recommendations. You can further drill down into each of the recommendations and make a fix. With that, I would like to conclude my session with some resources that you can utilize to grow your Azure expertise further. To start with, Microsoft Azure documentation. It is the source of truth. It is regularly updated and gives the first-hand information for any of the Azure services any of the Azure services you are trying to leverage. You can also use Microsoft Learn, which provides learning paths to learn about Azure. If you are looking for guidance on architecting and designing cloud-based solutions, head out to Azure Architecture Center, where you will get lots of guidance. If your organization is planning to adopt Azure, do check out Cloud Adoption Framework for Azure. Another good resource for learning is a weekly online show hosted by Scott Henselman called Azure Friday. Check it out. Finally, if you are interested in learning and working on Azure, I would recommend to check out Azure role-based certifications. With that, I'm done with my presentation.